Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're digging into a genuinely chilling documented account. We're talking about a deeply unsettling case where a modern family was suddenly forced to confront an 85-year-old, totally dark ancestral pact. We're going to see what happens when deeply entrenched cultural folklore collides head-on with rational disbelief, and the absolutely terrifying consequences that follow.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our source material today is a harrowing, true account sent in by a man named Rohit. He details his family's incredibly isolated home in Odisha, India, where, well, modern rationality clashed with some truly terrifying folklore. And it raises this really fascinating question. What actually happens when you just flat-out refuse to participate in an ancient, dark tradition?
Section 1. The 85-year dark ritual. To really get this, we need to picture the setting. An ancestral home near the town of Athagad, completely cut off from the main village. The isolation here is profound. The house, along with its ancient family temple, is swallowed up by this massive 31 biga forest. Now, a biga is a traditional unit of land measurement, so we're talking about a vast expanse. To put that into perspective, the property is connected to the outside world, to the main highway, by just a single, lonely 25-kilometer dirt road. It is literally the perfect isolated stage for an ancient family secret to hide.
For 85 years, this family was bound by some highly specific and honestly bizarre ritual requirements. Check this out. Whenever a son in the family gets married, he has to wait exactly 17 years. Right at that 17-year mark, he must bring his wife back to the village temple for a special puja, or worship ritual. But that second requirement is where it gets incredibly strange. The wife must be exactly 6 months pregnant at the time of the ritual.
Section 2. Breaking the ancestral pact. This is exactly where modern skepticism enters the story, right through Rohit's father. We're looking at a profound cultural conflict here. On one side, you have Rohit's father. He was a retired Navy officer, a man of the modern world, right? He already had 2 kids, and he fundamentally rejected these traditions. He flat out refused to participate, calling the whole thing utter superstition. But on the other side, his village relatives were in a panic. They were desperately warning him, pleading that this was a deeply important family tradition and that backing out would absolutely invite disaster. But, the father stood his ground.
And then, the catalyst. Just 1.5 months before they were supposedly scheduled to depart for this ritual, Rohit's grandfather unexpectedly dies, and this tragic event acts as a forced reunion. Because of traditional village mourning rites, all 17 members of the extended family are essentially compelled to travel down that lonely 25-kilometer dirt road and gather together at that isolated ancestral home.
Section 3. 13 Days of Mourning. The atmosphere inside that isolated house turns incredibly somber.
So in Hinduism, there's a strict 13-day mourning period that requires some really significant austerities. Mourners have to avoid salt, they follow highly specific diets, and they sleep on separate beds. And what's fascinating here is that the skeptical father, despite his completely modern worldview, actually followed all these grueling rules for the entire 13 days out of deep respect for his late father and his family.
And this brilliantly illustrates a very specific, traditional moment during these initial rites. The grieving grandmother follows a crucial cultural practice. She removes all of her gold jewelry and places it directly into her deceased husband's mouth before the funeral begins. Keep this detail in your mind, guys, because that gold jewelry is about to become the terrifying centerpiece of this whole explainer.
Section 4. The haunting escalates. So, the 13 days wrap up, and the extended family finally tries to leave for Bhubaneswar. But the father's car actually backs over and kills a stray cat. It's seen as a terrible omen, forcing them to stay one more very reluctant night. That night, the house basically becomes a trap, and things escalate rapidly. First, the parents hear the distinct, heavy sounds of horse hooves and jingling bangles pacing on the roof right above their heads. Then, a massive, violent banging shakes the main downstairs door. The father goes down to investigate, but while he's gone, something opens the locked terrace door, enters the parents' bedroom, and literally calls Rohit's mother by her name, Shanti.
Now, what's really interesting about this is what the father finds downstairs. He opens that heavy main door, and no one is there. But lying right there on the ground, it's his mother's gold earring, the exact same earring she had placed inside his dead father's mouth days prior. The sheer psychological horror of that moment is just staggering. Assuming it was some bizarre burial mistake, he quietly hides it and goes back to bed.
But whatever was in that house wasn't finished. Around 3:30 a.m., Rohit's cousin, who was sleeping downstairs, wakes up to a sickening sound. She describes it like something with massive teeth biting down. She creeps toward the grandmother's room and is completely paralyzed by what she sees, a dark entity choking the grandmother. By the time she gathers the courage to wake the father at 5 a.m., the grandmother is dead.
Section 5. The Brahma Rakshasa revealed. Terrified, the family attempts to flee via the Tiguriya forest road, but they suffer a sudden car crash in the forest, which forces them right back to the house. Desperate, they call in a senior priest.
So the priest arrives, right? He starts walking the property, doing his rituals. But suddenly, he stops dead in his tracks. His voice changes completely, like he's possessed by an unseen force, and he delivers this chilling warning in Odia. You didn't worship me. You didn't respect me. I will destroy your entire family.
The priest snaps out of it and realizes they are trapped in what's known as a panchuka. This is a highly inauspicious 5-day window in Hindu astrology where dark energies are incredibly potent. Realizing he is completely, wildly outmatched by whatever entity is in that house, the terrified priest just packs his bags and flees, telling them they need someone way more powerful.
What follows is just a relentless cascade of tragedy. Look at this timeline. The grandfather dies, the grandmother is choked to death, the car crashes. Left with zero spiritual protection, Rohit's father gets into a huge argument with his brothers, storms out in frustration, and heads down to the local river. Meanwhile, back at the house, Rohit and his mother hear footsteps upstairs, a knock at their bedroom door. And then, the dead grandmother's voice calls out, asking to be let in. They stay frozen in terror. 15 minutes later, the phone rings. Rohit's father has drowned in the river.
Utterly devastated, the surviving family members finally bring in a highly accomplished exorcist who uncovers the ultimate truth. The entity haunting them? It's a Brahma Rakshasa. 85 years ago, Rohit's great-great-great-grandfather made a demonic pact. He literally appointed this powerful, dark spirit as the head of the family in exchange for immense influence, wealth, and success. It's like a giant puzzle finally clicking together.
So the crucial point is this: that 17-year ritual wasn't just some innocent prayer for the family's well-being. In a horrifying twist of dark folklore, the ritual actually demanded the unborn 6-month-old child as a grisly sacrifice to appease the Brahma Rakshasa. The grandmother knew this dark truth all along. She kept it from Rohit's father to protect his unborn baby, and the entity choked her to death as punishment for hiding the secret that cost it its sacrifice.
Section 6. The tragic aftermath. How on earth does a family move forward when they realize their entire modern foundation, their success, their wealth, was built on an ancient blood-soaked contract?
Well, through that powerful exorcist, Rohit's family had the entire 31 Biga forest and the ancestral home permanently bound by protective mantras. Rohit notes in his account that the surviving family is physically safe now. The entity can't harm them. But he admits, whenever they are forced to visit the property, they still feel its heavy, lingering presence in the trees. The spirit is bound, but it certainly hasn't left.
We've seen how rational skepticism, while completely understandable, can unwittingly trigger some deeply entrenched, terrifying spiritual consequences. And it leaves us with a lingering thought to end on today. If your family's modern success was built on a dark, forgotten pact, would you have the courage to face it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this look into the Odisha ancestral haunting gave you a lot to think about. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.